Hey guys, welcome to or welcome back to my channel. This week we'll be reviewing Insecure episode 6 of season 5. So last week I didn't exactly do a review for episode 5, and that's because there wasn't really much happening. So what I'm going to do is just quickly run through the highlights of episode 5, and then we're going to jump straight into everything that happened for episode 6 because this episode had a lot more going on. Okay, so right off the bat with episode 5, we find out, well, from Molly's dad, that Molly's mom has unfortunately had a stroke. So Molly was actually on a date and, busy doing what she's doing. And so because of that, she wasn't really dressed appropriately for the hospital. So of course, Issa had to come there to help her switch off. So she gave her her sweatshirt and sweatpants. And then Issa went to her home to get her, more appropriate clothing as well as to walk her dog, just to help her out. So on this walk, two important things happened. Issa actually went with Nathan. So the first important thing was they actually lost the dog, and that took them a bit of time. And then her mom, which is played by Wendy Raquel Robinson, called, and she basically took over the conversation and introduced herself to Nathan. So after everything was said and done, they were on some bench after the dog came back to them, and Issa made the mistake in my opinion, of actually telling Nathan that she loves him, and he pretty much acted like he didn't really hear it. He just kind of ignored it and he did not say it back. And at the very end of the episode, which was the most interesting part, is that while back at the hospital, Issa went off to get some drinks from Molly, and she actually saw Lawrence and Condola and their baby, and she stood there for a bit just looking like she's contemplating her whole existence. And then of course Lawrence and her, their eyes meet each other and she eventually walks off. Okay, so those were all the important things for episode 5. So continuing from there, episode 6 picks up. So the episode picks up exactly where it left off, and Issa is looking at Lawrence and Condola, and the difference is she backs up because at the end of episode 5 she walks away. So she backs up and then she hears the doctor call out for them because they're there for their child's checkup, and Issa yells, "Wait!" And I am thinking to myself, please do not, because Issa loves an awkward moment. So I'm just like, please let her walk away. Don't let this be an awkward moment. Don't let her embarrass herself. But in pure Issa fashion, she proceeds to walk towards them, and then she says, can we just pretend this isn't as weird as it actually is? And Condola and Lawrence go, yeah, sure. And they're actually being very cordial, and I was quite surprised. And eventually Issa looks at the baby and then she says, oh, the baby's really cute. And then Condola says, thank you, would you like to hold him? Issa says yes, and I'm just like, what is going on? Because my maturity levels, it's just not there. So Condola gives Issa the baby, and Issa's holding the baby for a while. And then the whole thing, just the script gets flipped. Next thing, Issa literally, like she's shooting a basketball, shots the baby across the room and says, F this to the baby. Which was so inappropriate. And then Condola is like, oh my god, what is wrong with you? And then she kicks her into a laundry basket thing and says, F you too, bitch. And I'm just like, what is going on? At this point, we're sure that Issa is clearly daydreaming. And of course, so said, so be it. We go back to a shot of her sitting in her house at the table, literally chuckling to herself. And I'm just like, Issa, your imagination is dark. You tossed the baby across a room. Anywho, she proceeds to go on Lawrence's Instagram, because I guess obviously she's thinking about him, wondering what he's up to, and then she realizes that he has actually moved back to LA. So of course she feels some type of way, because the way she sees it, he moved back to LA to be with Condola. Tell me why the next scene is Issa, who's literally on top of Nathan. So clearly they're doing what it do. And remember, we discussed in the episode 5 highlights that she actually told Nathan she loved him and he did not respond. So of course, Issa being Issa, she's not gonna ask right out. She's just being very awkward, and she's just like, do you love this? And he's like, yeah, I love this. And then she's like, oh, tell me what else you love. Oh my God, when I tell you, like, this scene was so cringe for me, I literally paused it like 3 times to get through it because she was basically fishing for him to say that he loved her back, but he was being very evasive. And then he was like, well, do you want to switch in terms of do you want him to get on top? And she was just like, no. And then she kind of slowed down because clearly he wasn't picking up what she was putting down. And then even their post sex talk, like after she's lying on his chest, and again, she continues to fish, like, wanting him to say that he loves her. And I don't know, man, it was just awkward and just hard to watch. I'm just not feeling them together. But anyways, so now we see Nathan. The day has started. He's at work and he's finishing up a client in the barbershop, and the clients are pissed because they're just like, we've been waiting forever on Shug. That's like some people. Shug is another guy that works in the barbershop, and these clients are waiting on him, but he's always late. So here comes all the coworkers chiming in. One guy's like, yeah, plus he's always eating my food. The girl is like, oh, he's always talking about he don't like girls with weaves and whatever. Like, essentially, Shug is a trash person, but he's good for business because he brings in a certain clientele. I'm begging you no. May I beg you no for just ignore the dog there because we want fights. He will just not let me be great. But yes, ignore the dog. Yeah. So, anyways, eventually, one of the clients that are waiting says, you know what? I've been here so long that if I stay here any longer, my girlfriend is going to start suspecting that I'm out cheating. I'm just begging someone to, like touch me up. Let me get out of here. So he was like, you know what? It's all good. I'll do your hair for you. I'll take the heat. And he does the client's hair. Meanwhile, Issa is actually at the hospital with Molly's family, and since Molly is busy on a retreat for work, Issa is just holding down the fort, helping out her family, basically just being of help wherever she can. And Molly calls her and she's distracted because she's just like worried, like, what if something happens to mom while I'm gone and so forth? Like, she feels guilty, like I should be there, but instead I'm here. And Issa just reassures her that, it's all good. Like, she's definitely doing the best she can and so on and so forth. All while flirting with her brother, no less, who is very married with a child. And so Molly's like, you know what? He got herpes. But anyways, the next scene is actually Issa and her co-worker or her one staff member. They go out and they're looking for an act to headline the new show for, her what's it called? On the Block or On My Block business. And yeah, these people are called the Anthology Collective, and basically she feels like there would be a dope feature for the face of the project that she wants to do. So she goes in, they're hyped up, she's talking to them, she's telling them all the great things that she has lined up with other artists and her sponsor and how she wants them to join the team. And they were with it until she mentions the name of the company, On the Block. And then one of the dudes, he's like, wait, where have I heard that before? Needless to say, eventually they put 2 and 2 together and they realize they've heard the name from Crenshawn because he was on Instagram being a bitch. And so, yes, I said what I said because Kofi is really getting on my nerves in this show. Like, he's unwanted and not desired because his character is spoilt in this and he getting on my nerves. So eventually they were just like, you know what, we're gonna think about it and so on. That's just a diplomatic way of saying we're not gonna sign on to this because obviously somebody who is similar to us has basically been talking shit about you on the internet. So she took the L and then they left. So now we're back to Molly, who is chilling at the retreat with all of her coworkers. I guess they've done what they're supposed to be doing for the day, and they're all sitting and just kind of hanging out together, which I think is new for Molly because she's now like much more relaxed. And essentially everybody tells her like, we didn't really like you, like you were full of shit, but we love you now. And so she was like, oh my God, was I really that bad? And they were like, yeah. So we really are seeing the progress in Molly's like growth in terms of personality wise and like the self I guess realization that she was really a shit person. And it's just funny to watch. So the following morning, Molly wakes up and girl is discombobulated. The sweater that she had on is like one hand is sticking out, one hand is through. Her bed is covered in like all types of food, and then there's a watch. And Molly looks like she has no recollection. So she goes downstairs to get breakfast, and of course she sees her other coworkers at a table. Everybody else is dressed up because they had some ceremony thing in the morning that she obviously slept through. So she apologizes, she sits down, and then she's like, you know what, I found this watch which was like nowhere near my bed, nowhere near my room. So she got to make it clear like, well, whoever this belongs to, he wasn't in my place. But anyways, it turns out it was Torian's, which is her co-worker, and he was just like, you know, nothing happened, because she was a bit concerned, like, did we? And he was like, nah. And they showed her a video of what transpired the night before, and Molly was thrashed. When I tell you, just doing the most, dancing and pop locking, dropping, like no regard for the fact that she's with her co-workers. I'm hoping this does not have like an adverse effect on her job later on, but it seems like they're starting to see her as more down to earth. But she was very embarrassed, as she should be, because I was embarrassed watching that video for her, because the dancing, it was a lot. It was a whole lot. Then we have Issa going over to Crenshawn's camp, and Issa brought brownies with her as like, I guess, her peacemaker or peace offering. And you know what? It wouldn't have been me. So I really commend her for being the adult, because I feel like he's doing the absolute most and only thinking from his perspective. But I digress. So she goes over there, and when I tell you everybody is giving her the cold shoulder and stank vibes, I mean, down to the workers. She goes in, she offers them brownies. Nobody even answers her or even acknowledges her existence. Then she goes around, and eventually Crenshawn comes out, and she just tried to apologize, and I feel like he was just being so difficult, but eventually he explains himself. And from what he is saying, my understanding from just a whole synopsis, because I can't even be bothered to repeat all his rantings, he felt like she, as a woman of color, is someone who he kind of identified with, felt like they were on the same level, understood each other's struggle, and then he felt like she didn't have his back when it came down to it, and actually said to her that she was more concerned with her bag rather than his art. And I get what he's saying on one hand, but I feel two ways about it. I kind of feel like she can't be concerned with you alone and not be concerned with her business. She's building a brand for herself, and her business is fairly new. Without the sponsors, there is no show. So if they're having a problem with something and you can still get to represent your brand, but just kind of amend it a bit, I don't see what the problem is. And Issa has a problem speaking up for herself, let alone trying to speak up for other people. I don't think she meant any harm from it. So maybe I'm being biased because we have journeyed with Issa and we have seen Issa's growth. So maybe if I just saw this in isolation without knowing either of them, I would probably feel the way he felt. But I feel like he just kind of needs to see things from two sides. And the fact that she's trying to apologize, I feel like he's being mad immature, and had the nerve to say that, yes, he went off on Instagram, but rather than apologize on Instagram, she DM'd him with some bullshit. Girl, let me... Listen, it wouldn't have been me, okay? Because you feel froggy, let's jump, okay? Because I was just like, he's doing the most. But anyways, she eventually was just like, you know what? I'm gonna take my brownies back. And he was like, whatever, them brownies wasn't hitting anyway. He is so petty. Like, I'm happy, like, I would actually prefer for her to just not work with him in the future. But he's literally thrashing her brand. And because of that, it's affecting like future business, as we saw earlier in the episode. Now, speaking of people who are doing the most this episode, this was no different, because after that scene, we're back at the barbershop scene with Nathan, and I think they're collecting rent. So somebody said to Shug when he came through the door, you know, it's time for your rent. Are you ready to pay, or something to that effect? And dude just kept walking and was like, nah, Nathan's got it. So naturally, Nathan was like, say what? And he was like, nah, you got it, because since you want to steal people's clients or whatever, you got the rent. So he was like, bro, like, I was really just trying to help you out so you don't lose a customer and that the shop doesn't lose a customer. And he was just wilding out, talking about He don't care what he has to say. You don't take nobody's I guess there's like some code in the barbershop that no matter under no circumstances do you do their client's head. I mean, dude was late. Like he just was not there. So of course everybody else started to support Nathan and was just like, yo, but you really are late like all the time. You're never on time. And then, you know, they started to talk about like other things, like the fact that you eat people's food, you're not around for the upkeep, like, you know, basically you're just like a shit person. You don't do what you're supposed to do. And dude just has, quote unquote, forgive me for saying this, a nigga mentality, because he just feels like y'all weren't complaining before Nathan got here. So he put everything on Nathan instead of listening to the fact that everybody has something to say about him. And then went on to basically just act like, oh, I can do whatever I want because I'm the one who's bringing in the celebrity clients, and bada bing, bada boom, if it wasn't for me, y'all wouldn't be able to, you know, do what you do. And so next week I was gonna bring in so and so, but since y'all are acting up, I'ma just keep them to myself. And I was just like, the stankness that was coming off of him. Listen, there's some people that I just can't be around because they will make me act up, okay? They will take me out of my character. And Shug was acting dumb. So of course things get heated, and then Nathan says something to the effect of, yo, just stop your whining. And he was just like, yo, say that again and see what happens. So Nathan, of course, you know, men want to be men and show that, you know, they're strong enough to stand their ground. So he steps to him, and Shug steps up to Nathan as well. And he was just like, yo, what you say? And he screams on the top of his lungs, like, this is the nigga y'all want to listen to? This crazy nigga? And then screams out, like, this nigga bipolar, like, worry about yourself before you start worrying. And I was just like, that is so foul. And this is why people are so afraid to, like, admit when they're going through mental struggles. Because in this day and age, like, why are we still using that as a weapon? Like, yeah, if he's bipolar, but he has it under control. He has a job, like he's holding the fort down. Why are you bringing that up? You are not bipolar and you ain't shit. So what is your point? You know what I'm saying? Like, I was very annoyed by that whole interaction. And of course, Nathan was embarrassed because, as we have seen from previous episodes, it's very clear that he's still, I guess, grappling with the idea that he's bipolar. It's still not something that he shares with everybody, because he automatically looked very uncomfortable when Shug, like, you know, put him on blast, which naturally anybody would be. Anyway, things kind of die down or settle down a bit, because now we're back at Molly's retreat, and her and Torian are giving a presentation because, remember, it's a work retreat. And when I tell you, so she's so distracted, because I was a little bit embarrassed, like maybe she gonna like really just space out. And she was still talking about, like, still saying, giving the presentation, but she was just so sporadic with her words. Like, it was clear that she wasn't focused because her phone kept buzzing. Who gives a presentation and carries their phone on vibrate right in front of them? Like, unheard of. You don't silence it, but okay. So she was distracted. And obviously, because it was her brother and she didn't really know what was happening, she was worried that, you know, it might have been an emergency with her mom. So naturally, completely distracted. But Torian held her down, thank God. And after, he was just like, yo, my back is hurting. And he was just like, she was just like, really? Why? He was like, you know, from carrying the whole presentation by myself. And I was just like, no, he didn't. But eventually, she had to open up to him and just share what has been her experience, and that her mom has a stroke and so on. Come to find out, like, he was able to be supportive and relate because his brother had cancer last year. And so, you know, I was just like, oh my God, is Molly gonna get a man? Like, is Torian gonna be her man? Because, like, their vibe was so good. He matches her fly, he's educated, like, he has a job, and he's just as hyped as she is, but, like, they balance each other. And I really, really liked their vibe. So they had a good old chat, and I was here for it. Tell me why the next scene is Issa waiting in line for food and Condola comes behind her, yeah? And Condola's like, oh, you know, I guess we have the same taste. And just basically going on and on about all the great things about her life currently. And her and Lawrence are engaged. And, you know, not with that mall ring that he proposed to you with. Mine is much bigger. And going on about all these things that are just so much bigger and better than when he was with Issa. And I just like, clearly she's imagining again. And on top of everything, she gets her food before Issa, despite coming after her and not even ordering anything. And then Issa was like, wait, what? Because I came before you. And she was like, well, you know, that's just how winners do. And while she collects her food, she comes back, and when I tell you, she gives Issa the kick of her life, and Issa goes flying into the garbage. And then she was just like, you know what, own your decisions, and just walks off. And of course, that's when Issa snaps out of it. Issa really needs to get to a place where she is okay, and with the fact that, her and Lawrence may just need to take a break or move on, because she still has not made a clean cut, which is so confusing to me, because she's over here telling Nathan that she loves him, which obviously she still is not over her ex, because she stays thinking about him and Condola. So Molly's day is over. She's back at her hotel room. She's taken off her shoe, and her brother calls. And she's just 21 questions. Is everything okay? How is mom? This, that, this. And he's just like, would you shut up? Like, their brother sister vibe is very believable, because the way he acknowledges her is exactly how a brother would just be like, would you shut your dumb ass up and let me tell you what I need to tell you? And then he basically says, I got good news. He turns the camera, and we see that their mom is actually, she's okay. She's awake. She's out of the coma. But he does say that even though she's out of the coma, she's not speaking just yet. But Molly is so relieved and so happy, naturally, because she was really worried, and of course they know that they still have a bit of a way to go, but the brother actually said that they're considering to let the mom out as early as tomorrow. They're just watching to see how it goes. So they get off the phone, and then her doorbell rings. Of course, it's Torian, because he brought a swag bag for her from one of the events that was happening downstairs, and I just kind of felt like that was a reason to come to the door, because really, could you not wait until tomorrow? And she is so happy that she tells him exactly like, oh, my mom's out of the coma, and leaps into his arms. And it was this whole moment of like a hug, which goes into like a, oh my God, what am I doing type of thing. So then they got all awkward. She opens the swag bag, takes out a mug, and then she's like, I like mugs. And he's like, yeah, they're very useful. They could be cup holders. Just like being very awkward. It was very Issa of her. But I just like the building of what they're doing with Molly and Torian, because it's about time. I liked Andrew, but I didn't like Andrew for Molly. But Torian, I'm liking it. I'm liking it a lot. Anyway, so that scene is over, and now we're seeing Issa, who is getting back to what I believe to be Nathan's apartment, and she's bringing back the food that she was in line to get earlier. So obviously she's not feeling that great, or she doesn't look that great. So he's like, you good? And I noticed that rather than open up and say like what's bothering her, which obviously would be the Crenshawn stuff, she just says, yeah, I'm okay, it's just some work stuff. Which I'm just like, if you're in a relationship where you feel like you're in love, do you not open up and share like what's happening, what's actually happening? And I think Issa wants to be okay so bad, but is not paying attention to the fact that she doesn't feel safe. Like, she's not in a safe space to just be herself and be open with Nathan. Anyway, so she asks him back after saying that, like, so how was your day? And he says, you know what? He's contemplating leaving the barbershop because he can't trust the people there. There's just a lot of BS going on, a lot of drama, and he feels like he might just leave LA. And so she's just kind of like taken aback, which I felt like Issa should have taken a moment and responded to what he said and asked him like what happened. She did not, because she's still salty about the I love you thing. And so it kind of compounded with her feelings. And then she was just like, so I told you I loved you, and then you don't respond. You haven't said anything. Are we just gonna continue to ignore or act like I didn't say it? And he was just kind of like, are you serious right now? Like, now you want to talk about that? I feel like you're always trying to call me out for something. You didn't even ask me like what happened, which that part I agree with. So then she was like, am I supposed to ignore the fact that you just said you're gonna leave LA? I feel like I'm the only one who is, like trying to commit to the situation. What she actually said was she feels like she's committed and he has not. And his perspective was just like, what do you want from me? Because and then she's just like, she wants him to like commit. And he's just like, actually, you don't know what you want, because 1 minute you said like you weren't sure what you wanted, you were crying in my mouth. Next minute you came back and said you wanted to be with me. Then you said you wanted to take it slow, and now you're saying you love me. And I was like, well, damn. Checkmate, because I was like, Issa, he actually does have a very good point. However, Nathan, you are not the one to be telling people they're inconsistent, which he basically said, you're inconsistent as hell. And I was like, you see, the problem is you're both inconsistent, because Issa is inconsistent with what she wants. And I don't necessarily think I would call it inconsistency. I think she's processing through it. And rather than being single and processing it, she's trying to be in a relationship and process it. And I think that's why it's coming across like she's inconsistent or wishy-washy. But Nathan is a runner. Like whenever things are not going great, he runs, and that's him being inconsistent. So naturally it's frustrating. They get into a back and forth, and because she can't say what she needs to say, she was just like, you know what, let's just forget it. And this is how you know somebody doesn't care about you, because rather than try to solve it, he was like, okay, let's forget it. And then he sits down, she goes around the back for her food, and then comes and sits on the other end of the couch. So he's on one end, she's on the other end, and the TV lights are going. And I'm just like, listen, me, myself, and I'd have been like, have a good night, because I would have been gone. I would have gone home and me not chat to you until you apologize. But you know, Issa is a different person from I am. And that was the end of the episode.